Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening.
How do I mute
Hope you can
myself
all
after I
hear
go?
me. Welcome to a transatlantic. Jeff, there's a little icon at the top of the video screen. It's a microphone with a slash going through it, and you can mute yourself with that. But don't
Okay,
mute
cool.
yourself just now. Just don't say anything.
Okay.
Can you hear me, everybody?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
can hear you.
All right. Welcome, everybody. We've had some technical issues, as you can see, as you can hear. It's been a bit hectic, but we're finally online, I hope. It's a transatlantic poetry reading, and it's sponsored by Body, two poets that I admire very much. We've published some of their work in Bodies, Jeffrey McDaniel from the USA and Jack Underwood from the UK. We're going to have Jeffrey go first. I'll just give you a brief bit of information about Jeffrey. He's the author of 5 books of poetry. His 5th book, The Chapel of Inadvertent Joy, has just been published by the University of Pittsburgh, and he teaches at Sarah Lawrence College, and he lives in the Hudson Valley. Let me just bring up my video screen again. Jeffrey, how are you tonight?
Good, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm just going to, if you just like to go ahead and get right into it. Everybody, I hope you're going to enjoy this. Jeffrey McDaniel.
Okay, here's a new poem called Winter Bride. In the off-season, she comes down to the swamps and lagoons of Florida, and we sit around the lagoon like Persephone and Hades, sipping Bloody Marys, as crocodiles slink through the swamp water like long slithers of green lobster through microwaved butter. Playing board games, we bask in the constellations, visible through gaps in the trees. I can almost forget her other boyfriends, as the thick leaves seem to sway with our laughter. But then she smiles a little too wide, and her tongue lashes out like the tail of a primordial crocodile. And I think of all the men that have soaked in her mouth's natural hot spring. Enough to fill the lagoon, she once joked, and the bones in my shoulders crumble into quicksand. Just put your hand on my chest like it's a Bible, I say, and I'll stand a foot behind you and let the wind bring handfuls of your scent as the howler monkeys go la-la in the dark. I'll step forward 1 inch every 10 minutes until our bodies are pressed like the pages of a banned book. You smell like roses made out of adobe, I whisper. I'm your adobe bouquet, she whispers back, and that right there is enough for me, doing something she's never done with a man before in the dark. Then the moon opens its big fat mouth and shines like a security guard into the lagoon, and all the men she's been with are illuminated, and I see the hairy back of the stockbroker, the chiseled jaw of the investment banker, the yeah bra of the college kid in a nightclub bathroom, and my insides are spaghetti, and I slide down to her feet like a dress she's sliding out of, and she's standing there, 50 feet tall, a cigarette in one hand and a warrant for my arrest in the other. And she smiles, revealing a mouthful of crocodile teeth, and the cicadas getting louder like the wheels of Satan's chariot in the distance. Okay, I'll read, let's see here. It's a weird poem I never read. It's called Little Soldier of Love. March, you were just here. Now you're gone, vanished on permanent hiatus. A month of rain you were, a month of me strapped to an ottoman in a hotel room, blindfolded, you snapping pictures of me naked, then posting them on Craigslist asking who wants her now. the ticking of the clock, the chilled steam from your lung machine, the knock on the door, the heavy footsteps, the anonymous canisters of breath exploding on my shoulder, a sweaty palm on my calf, a zipper opening so slowly, each metal notch catching on the ridges of my spine. March, you think you can just order room service and leave me bed-tied, a note taped to my clavicle. Every year it's the same with you, March, marching muddy footprints through people's lives, a little door with rusty hinges to the forehead opened wide. Okay, so yeah, it's not March here yet in New York. It's still February. It's a very cold February. This is called Hello. Hello, the person gazing at this page before you had really amazing eyes. Blue, the way the Caribbean is blue, that first minute off the plane. To someone who grew up in New Jersey. Anyway, it's good you're here. The truth is I have been lonely, crawling up and down the page at night. Life is like this boomerang. You get hurled out and everything is fresh. Then you hit 40 and start to arc back to the hand that flung you from the womb, the Lord's hand. And then it's all rerun. I know I'm complaining that it's unattractive, but please forgive me, because complaining is like sex for old people. Have you ever cringed with your whole body, been so filled with shame you wanted to wriggle out of your flesh like a serpent in a forest, like the snake that betrayed Eve? No one ever mentions how the snake apologized, how he tried to make it up to them, how the Lord punished the snake too, said, I will fill your kind with so much shame and self-hatred you will writhe out of yourself every 6 months, just like a man's penis. It's true, twice a year men wake and find nothing in their boxers but the empty casings of their runaway fallacies. Anyway, 1875, a Civil War vet from Virginia gets off a boat in England. Everyone calls him Yankee. He cringes and snarls, I ain't no Yankee. I killed Yankees. But after a month he begins to take it. The way we all begin to take the gray hairs in our underpants, the ring of our anus loosening, our rocket ship struggling to pierce the atmosphere. Now, if you would just lean forward a little, friend, and drag your fragrant strands over my voluptuous grief. Okay. Let's stick with the theme of like middle-age sexiness here. This is called middle age. Yeah, all right. After an hour on the phone with creditors, your testosterone feels like watered down lemonade. You couldn't impregnate an awkward pause. Remember the old days when your wife was belly swollen and you strutted Brooklyn streets with an internal boner twanging against your spleen? Imagined being a crop duster filled with semen and pollinating all the women passing in springtime dungareens. Now you clean greasy spots of masculinity off the tiles and mop on your knees like Cinderella with saggy boobs in a t-shirt that says, used to be one of the fellas. Now the bathroom feels just way too biological. Even in your man cave, you're civilized. To-do lists spray painted on the ceiling. A latex doll wobbling towards you, holding a strap-on and a palm full of Rogaine. Okay, so Yeah, it's interesting sort of reading to a silence. What do I think about that silence? I'm not sure. I'll read a poem into the silence. This is called Jonathan. I'm not sure if there's anything you need to know about this poem, but I will read it to you now in this transatlantic setting. We're underwater off the coast of Belize. The water is lit up even though it's dark, as if there are illuminated seashells scattered on the ocean floor. We're not wearing oxygen tanks, yet staying underwater for long stretches. We are looking for the body of the boy we lost. Each year he grows a little older. Last December, you opened his knapsack and stuck in a plastic box of carrots. Even though we're underwater, we hear a song playing over a policeman's radio. He comes to the shoreline to park and eat midnight sandwiches, his headlights fanning out across the harbor. And I hold you close, apple of my closed eye, red dance of my opened fist. Okay. I guess I'm reading more. I don't know how I'm doing time-wise, but maybe one of you guys can tell me when I'm getting into the zone of being reading for the time that I need to read. Okay. Let's see this. How about a poem? A poem about being a dad. This is called, I'll read this one about my daughter being born. It's called Self-Portrait as a Stick of Butter, or the 4-day anniversary of my daughter's birth. So it's a persona poem and a stick of butter. If I was really smart, I would be able to be like, it's in the voice of this stick of butter, but that's a cell phone. I am a stick of butter. I have not been cut into yet, but I have been unwrapped. I'm in the fridge, in a plastic tray that says butter. There's nothing in here except a jar with a single olive. It's so dark, I don't know that olive, all round and perfect in its glass. I wish someone would open the door and spread me over a warm piece of toast. I'm afraid I will be left out overnight on the kitchen table and will melt into a puddle. Someone will enter and say, yuck, look at this chemical junk. I will reply, I'm not all chemicals. There is good in me too. In fact, I'm somewhat organic, but perhaps the someone is right. I close my eyes and count to 100. I tighten my muscles, I concentrate, become solid again. Uncut, a sturdy stick of butter back in the dish's cradle, the olive glimmering like that hint of moon visible on a moonless night. So yeah, that poem, when I wrote it, I really didn't know at all what it was about. I did write it on the day of when my daughter was 4 days old. And yeah, but now it's very clear to me that she's the olive in the water and that I am in the refrigerator with her. And I don't know who she is, but now I do, because she's 8. Okay. Well, let me ask you, what poem would you like to hear? Would you like to hear a happy poem or a sad poem? Let's read a poem called Little Sadness. I know the pain is inside me, that the sadness has not gone away forever. But where is it? Come here, my little sadness, I whisper down my esophagus. Oh, here he comes, the 3-legged bugger, with mother's turpentine eyes and fur, the exact gray the afternoon sky was when Dad hurled the television out the 3rd-story window. Here, my petite clump of misery, I mutter. Hop onto my lap, up, up. Of course he cannot, but he tries anyway, bashing his bony head against my kneecap, whimpering. Good little sadness. Good. So yeah, you can go to the emotional pet store and you can get a different pet to fit for what you need. I would like to say hi to my friend Michael Stein. Mike, I hope to see you sometime in around here. And everyone else, thanks for having me. I think I'm going to read a couple more poems, and then we'll probably be out of this thing. And then for the first portion of this, anyway. So this poem is called Origins. It's about growing up in Philadelphia, Center City. I'm working on this book where I've been interviewing kids I grew up with, and sometimes their parents. I'm not sure where it's going. Maybe it's going to be like an alumni notes for a neighborhood. And there's like an Irish neighborhood nearby. They were we called them the Taneys, but they were called Schuylkill. I think that movie God's Pocket, or The Devil's Pocket with Philip Seymour Hoffman, it's based on a novel from that neighborhood. But we used to have these fights with these kids every now and then, and I've interviewed some of them. So that's kind of interesting to interview kids that you had fights with. And one of them's a cop now, and another one is some of them are dead, and then some of them are I don't know what's going on with the other ones. All right, Origins. I'm from touch football in parking lots and street corner Romeos. I'm from half brothers and three-quarter Nelsons. I'm from watered down blue blood and finger painting on subway walls. I'm from tongue kisses in stairwells and tequila sunsets in the closet. I'm from stealing the coins out of other people's wishing wells. I'm from Jordache jeans and pickup games in the twilight. I'm from Italian girls wearing murmurs I oh so badly wanted to speak. I'm from sidestepped obligations and nomadic fingertips. I'm from Listerine in alleyways and whiskers in the Vaseline. I'm from unreliable narrators and abandoned buildings. I'm from don't cross 24th Street because of the Irish, and don't cross South Street because of the blacks. I'm from the merry-go-round where white guys in cars slow down after midnight to take a visual bite out of my 12-year-old ass. I'm from fuck you when my friends are around, and please stop looking at me, please stop looking at me, please stop looking at me when I'm alone. I'm from sucker punches and a mouthful of blood spit in my face. I'm from a nightgown breathing at the bottom of a staircase. I'm from I wish you died in that hospital. I'm from exit plans that involve shotguns. I'm from you're gonna front like the hard guy, you better back that shit up. Okay, so my last poem will be, these are the covers of my last two books that I kind of like. This is called The Endarkenment, and then this is called Chapel of Inadvertent Joy. And this picture is by Miranda Lichtenstein, a pretty cool photographer who went to college with Mike Stein and I. Thank you guys for putting this on. And yeah, look forward to hearing the other work here and see what's going down here. And hopefully I'll get over to Europe again. I used to live in Prague back in, 1993. Just hang out at a place called The Bunker. The Bunker. Okay, Chapel of Inadvertent Joy. 1 minute you're hissing at your wife about something trivial. The next you are stomping derelict train tracks when it emerges, its spires shooting up between your ribs. Your gaze swivels skyward and catches a clutch of birds glittering over a smokestack, sparkling back and forth in the sky in various formations, like a math equation being worked out in the mind of a genius. Always pull the car over when you spot a teen punk rock show at dusk in a public park. Always drink a glimpse of a white horse in a sunlit pasture at the end of summer. Always laugh when the garden hose slips out of your hand and sprays you in the face. When they said, smell the roses, they didn't tell you that every day the rose changes, that first you must identify the rose. Today you're in a field by the Hudson. Ribbons of nectar spool from a folk singer's lips. Your wife and daughter lollygag in the grass. Sunlight drizzles through tree leaves, an organic stained glass window. Feel the convergence of all your stray voltage. Do not pull out of that feeling. Let the father standing next to you see your eyes well up. The inverse of how the neighbors sometimes hear you yelling, fuck. It's true. You do not deserve this. But it's yours anyway. The gold-tipped spurs of this moment. A red bird flinging praise through the sky. Thank you. I'll clap for myself. So that's the end of my reading. I think Chris is coming back now to announce something, perhaps.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much, Jeffrey. That was fantastic. Enjoyed that very much. Yeah, okay. So next we have up Jack Underwood. It's one of my very favourite poets. Jack's from the UK, teaches at Goldsmiths College in London. He won an Eric Gregory Award in 2007. Faber published his first pamphlet, and they're going to publish his first collection, Happiness. I believe that's going to be this year. So I'd like everyone to welcome, please, Jack Underwood. Jack, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm good to go.
Go on, great, fantastic.
Well, thanks, Chris, and thanks, Jeffrey. I really enjoyed that reading. And yeah, the March poem. It's not March here either yet. Still February. But I'm going to read a poem. Start of the poem called Spring, which is sort of, we're getting there. We're trying. Spring is here, so now the plants and animals are starting to have sex again. We've unblocked the drain of its crud and bump. The smell is waning. We've washed the gravel and piled the fox turds in a far-off corner. We are wearing slightly fewer clothes. Our bodies, newly exposed, are strangers to themselves. They chime against the air. A thought arrives of our life together yet to come. It configures like a beam of dust. Look, this plant has made it through the winter, you say, as millions of photons whoosh through my hands. And I'll read the title poem from the new book, which should be out in July. As Chris said, it's called Happiness. Happiness. Yesterday it appeared to me in the form of 2 purple elastic bands round a bunch of asparagus, which was a very small happiness, a garden variety, nothing like the hulking conversation cross-legged on a bed we had 10 years ago, or when I saw it as a thin space in a mouth that was open slightly, listening to a friend pinning them with an almost cruel accuracy, the sense of being known, making a space in their mouth that was happiness. There was the happiness of my mother as we sat on a London bus, her having travelled alone to visit her son, and she seemed more present, which might have been the luggage I was carrying for her that weighed heavy as her happiness, or was her happiness. It is rare you see a happiness so nut-like as that which we permit my father to pass around when he is talking sentimentally, embarrassing us all. And of course, the goofy 10-gallon hats of happiness that children plant on us every time they impersonate knowledge. Or when I am standing on a step, breathing it in and out, staying death and the deadness that comes after dying, sighing like a song about it. Or privately with you, when we're watching television and everyone else can be depressed as rotten logs for all we care. Because various and by degrees as it is, we know happiness because it is not always usual and does not wait to leave. I thought I'd read a poem, excuse me, that Body published, and it's called A Man is Dragging a Dead Dog. A man is dragging a dead dog on a lead down the street. It makes a low register hissing sound that is constant and gives you a sense of the weight of the dead dog. The lead is pulled tight to a straight line. It is attached to a collar which is the point of the freight most forward, the dog's head having been pinned beneath its body as it moves along relatively slowly against the pavement, making that hissing sound. The rearmost point of the dead dog is what you might call in this instance its bottom leg, because the pelvis has been rotated, the dog twisted on its side, so one leg is in full contact with the ground while the other is slightly elevated and wobbles. And since you already have a street in mind, and perhaps a breed of dog, a colour of lead, or the kind of coat the man is wearing, why not become the man dragging a dead dog on a lead behind you? Why not try to understand this thing you are doing, how the dog came to be dead, and you came to be dragging it, what this means to you, and where it is that you are going. This next poem is for the German poet Masha Kaleko, who isn't alive anymore. But I originally began trying to translate her work, which is really difficult because I don't speak any German at all. So I sort of just chucked it into online translation software and got this sort of weird dynamic mess that I then fiddled around with. But then the Kaleko estate actually just said, no way, you can't do that. So in the end, what I did was the sort of voice that I developed, which I imagined to be her voice, I then used that voice to write poems to her, almost like responses to her work. So this is a poem called Letter of Health, and it's for Masha Kaleko. My body is in debate. This house believes that love is an enviable fever. Last night my chest was in office on fire, my pillow hurt, I couldn't save the documents. Now it is day again. The room has furniture, and I have ins and outs, my liquids. Is that the knife grinder grinding his knives outside the window, or the sound of my heart cooling down? If I were in a novel, you'd travel 3 days by horse to see me. If you were in a novel, I'd die somewhere in these middle chapters. It is strange, isn't it, really? Jeff was saying it's strange reading to the silence. It's really weird. Just in your house, you become very conscious of like how loudly you're saying these poems, in your house, which you don't normally do. Neighbours must think I'm mad. This is a poem called Thank You for Your Email. 2 years ago, I was walking up a mountain path, having been told of excellent views from the summit. The day was clear and hot, the sky wide and cloudless. There was only the sound of my breathing, my boots treading, and the faint clonking of cowbells back down the track. What little wind there was on the climb soon dropped as I reached the summit, as if it had been distracted or called upon to cover events elsewhere. I drank eagerly, catching my breath, and then took in the view, which was as spectacular as I had been told. I could make out a tree, a shrub really, though it being so distant in the valley below I couldn't say how high, silently on fire, the smoke trailing a vertical black line before dissipating. I watched the flames consume the whole shrub. No one came to stop it, no one seemed to be around to see it, and I felt very alone. From nowhere a great tearing came. A fighter jet, low and aggressive, ripped above me, and surprised I dropped on one knee and watched it zoom, bellowing overhead. As it passed I saw a shred of something fall, a rag, spinning. I shielded my eyes to see, bewildered and pinned, watching the object, the rag, gather its falling weight, its speed, until it flumped down without a bounce, only 10 footsteps to my right. It was part of a white bird, a gull. No head, just a wing and a hunk of body. No leg or tail, just the wing and the torso, purple and bloodied. A violent puddle surrounded it, already mixing with the grit. Ferrous blood wafted, and I recoiled, feeling suddenly cold and very high up, and the view swam madly. I saw for a second the flaming tree as I staggered backwards, and became aware that I was sitting. I had fallen, but I felt as if I was falling and falling still, my mind unable to connect the events which were real and terrifying, because they were real. Only now I think it was not, perhaps, a mountain. It was not, perhaps, a shrub on fire, and not a fighter jet boring its noise through the sky, and I am certain now it was not me, or a wing or body of a broken bird, but the fearful and forgotten things I've lied to myself about, and to my friends, and to my family. This is a poem has the word proteinus in it. And originally I thought it was protaneous, which I preferred the sound of. And then I was really disappointed to find out that it didn't have that extra I. And I really didn't want to say protaneous all the time because you have to say anus. But now I have to say enus, which is also sort of makes you think of penis. So I don't really know what to do about it, but I'm going to have to persevere with it, really. She loves you like your hair smells proteinous. She loves you like pausing to move a snail somewhere safer in the rain. She loves you like milk is not like water. She loves you like the last seconds of a bottle being filled. She loves you like tennis played by amateurs. She loves you like tennis played by professionals. She loves you like a leg of lamb. She loves you like a hollowed pumpkin as the candle descends. She loves you like the delivery man's knock. She loves you like parents falling asleep wherever they are. She loves you like a plane refueling. She loves you like the fuel inside the hose, which is clear, cold, and flammable. And this is a love poem called Weasel. So, Weasel, it has come to this. To your thighs like tall glasses of milk, your biscuit hair, eyes that are like any kind of deep water. It has come to those coiled, snaking guts we had when we were younger still, those balled-up sock guts of an afternoon stolen back from college. It has come to the spastic, ticking urges rising through skin at the simplest repositioning of your weasel hips, or the 1 in 27 kisses I might land about your mouth of the right temperature and diction. Was I even hungry once for eating? Were you ever not the end to all fasts? And this is a poem called Theology, and it's a true story. He tried to think about the zoo, the bird he'd seen with an anvil head, slinking lizards in the reptile house. It had been a good day. But he remembered the panther enclosure, where he had waited for 30 minutes, staring up at a dark hut hidden in trees. Suppose there was no panther. Yeah, okay. This is another poem for Masha Kaleko, and it's called Solo for Masha Voice. As soon as you leave the room, the rain turns its volume up. Loneliness nudges me with its head. I forgive you for ruining my life. When we were young, you bullied my architecture, peered right in, and it wasn't fair to do that. These years since, I have died from it. Yes, I admit when you were mine, I stood too close at parties. But tell me how that's incorrect in love. Tell me, and I promise I'll put these ornaments down. This next poem is an intralingual translation, which means that I've translated a famous poem from English into this poem in English. And the poem is The Good Morrow by John Donne, which does kind of need translating because it's obviously all olden days. The Good Morrow. I'm not sure I remember what we did before we loved. Were we gherkins bobbing in our harmless jars with vinegar and seeds, or were we stuffed in a tube of sleep for years? Probably, but that kind of life is carbohydrate. If I enjoyed anything then, it was feeling full. The rover is making dust ladder tracks on Mars. The Victorian sewers have been overhauled, widened. And here we both are, up and dressed. But it's intimidating, isn't it? When cack-handed love is at his console, nuking all life beyond this tenuous room. I'm going to rely heavily on you out there. This poem's called Love Poem to Myself. I wrote it because I realised that my girlfriend isn't going to write me a love poem, so I did what anyone would do. Love Poem to Myself. Your basic appetites and pale feet renew my faith in evolution. When you slide drunk into a bath, all the palm trees in Miami burn. When I think about your nervous system, its black market of strands tearing electrics, I feel outwardly stupid. I love you, I say, and the room rings as if the air around my skin were the rind of something citrus. Just looking ahead at how many minutes I've got left, and whether I should bother with this. Okay, yeah, I can get through these quick. This poem's called The Spooks. I want to inject blood into the banana, then put it smartly in a bowl. I want someone to idly choose it, peel it, then taste the strange rust a quarter way down, and see and spit it out, see blood in the lemony mulch, a sort of red spit with the tiny black seeds. I want them to check their mouth for a source, a cut, and by now the person they are with will be confused, blood on the lip and the footwell at the gum edges, and say, "Are you okay?" I want them to reply, "There's blood." Then without even meaning to, without a logical tracing of thought, look back to the banana and see blood in the banana. Feel the raw shock of something possibly unthought of. I want them to get to the idea that someone put the blood in the banana, an idea drinking heat from the skin but held, unable to understand to fit the reasons I want this to happen. This is called Some Gods, and it's a list of gods, really. Yeah. God with eagle's head and five-pointed star insignia on palm of hands. God connected to 7 IV drips with fire coming out of mouth. God made of warts. God with horse's legs and head of ram reading names from a scroll pointing to a hole in the ground. God surrounded by representatives from the animal kingdom. God surrounded by representatives from the kingdom of global finance. God with cobbler's last and washing line with human faces pegged along. God with merciful expression holding knife and fork. God as a female infant. God with stomach as gumball machine. God as a smiling coma patient between starchy cotton sheets surrounded by cards and flowers. God banging human skull gavel to silence a courtroom of lesser gods. God being led into a courtroom and asked to confirm holy name. God in fool's attire inviting you to play a game of rummy. God as bronze medalist forcing smile on podium. God as golden ball of light forming in your chest. God as a feeling of intense and sudden cold. God as a feeling of sudden loneliness. God as a cup in your house that you haven't yet recognized as God, but drink from nearly every day. God as a dead robin. God as the eye of a dead robin. God as your barely visible reflection in the eye of a dead robin. Sometimes your sadness is a yacht, huge, white, and expensive, like an anvil dropped from heaven. How will we get on board up there when it hurts our necks to look? Other times it is a rock on the lawn, and matter can never be destroyed. But today we hold it to the edge of our bed, shutting our eyes on another opened hour, and listening to our neighbours' voices, having the voices of their friends around for lunch. I enjoyed Jeff's sadness poem. I like the idea of being able to buy a sadness and maybe also like take it back, keep a receipt. Maybe that would be a good thing. This poem is called My Sister, and I've just got like 3 more, so and they're all short. This poem I wrote between me and my older brother. My mother miscarried a girl, and so I've always sort of grown up with the knowledge that that I could have had an older sister, or kind of been that older sister. I could have been. I know the logic isn't right there, but that's sort of how I feel. My sister. 2 summers ago, when I was going nuts, I thought my sister's ghost lived in our garden. My shoulders felt warm, and I confided. Let me say she was real then, as a tongue you can bite. Let me say I knew she was very good at hockey and fun as a tent. She painted roughly but well, liked boys with beards but not sex with boys with beards. Her hands were the same size as mine. Her voice seemed unaffected by gravity, and she would often discover herself holding a table's attention. She told me her ideal man was Picasso, and that her biggest regret was not putting her name firmly onto living, slipping beneath it before she was born. And I regret it. In the garden with the dead fireworks, my face going wet, everything crashed on this wall, another summer coming on. This is called Poem of Fear for My Unborn Child. When I think about pushing your pram by the pond, all the dogs off their leads, nothing between us and the dark, weedy water, I drown you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I cannot save your soft head from the terrier whose jaws lock, and that I wasn't looking the second you disappeared, leaving me hot and turning round for the man or any kind of words. And as you've grown strong enough for kites and canoes or walks to shops, again, I'm sorry. I'm such a dreadful future father. I'm on the curb crying. I'm a mess with your scarf. All this fear, like a fizz building in a bad grey egg, is waiting for you. All this green stick nodular love, so tense, perversely stored like a bubble in my lungs, will be here, a huge trembling hand, when you arrive. And this poem is called William. It's the last poem. It's for my nephew. And it actually says William at 4 days. So this is about meeting him when he's 4 days old. So there's a sort of strange coincidence with Jeffrey's poem there. Yeah, William at 4 days old. When the lock chucks familiar, or a cat follows its name from a room, when silence is strung, or rain holds back the trees, I thought I had the lever of these. But weighing your fine melon head, your innocent daring to be, and mouth first searching, your tiny fist is allowed absolutely, and I am uncooked. I can feel my socks being on. Utter precious apple. Churchyards flatten in my heart. I've never been brilliant so scared. Thanks. Is anyone there? Everyone's just got bored and run away.
No, I'm here. Hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hi.
Hello. Hello.
Hi.
Hello. Can anyone? Yes.
Yep.
Very slow connection. All right. Thanks very much, Jack. That was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. I'm sitting here with a glass of Clynelish single malt Scotch, 14 years old, enjoying myself. Just a word for people. To tell you where I'm speaking to you from. I'm sitting right now in Benešov. It's a little town, village about 30 kilometers south of Prague. Beautiful little place. That's where I am right now. Archduke Franz Ferdinand had his castle about 3 kilometers from here. Konopiszcze is the name of that place for you history fans. All right, we've had some questions come in. Let me just check what the first question is and who it's from. If you just bear with me. The first, wait 1 second. First question is from Valerie, and she's in London, and she asks, I guess both Jeff and Jack, what is your first memory of poetry, or alternatively, your first poetic memory. So let's ask Jack first. Jack.
I don't know which one to ask really. Answer. First poetic memory, or first memory of poetry. I think just sort of kind of growing up, having to study it at school, and not really, and finding it annoying that you had to know all this other stuff before you were supposedly allowed to understand the poem. I found that always very frustrating. So I didn't necessarily jump in a positive way. I think actually probably like in terms of poetic language, I think it was actually like I was in some Shakespeare plays when I was a teenager, and I think finding this sort of the way that the language sort of moved and behaved in Shakespeare, that I think I sort of got how poetry worked as a kind of rhetorical sort of thing, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, my experience, I guess, was different. One thing I think when I was like in sixth grade, I got some Richard Pryor records, and I used to listen to them when I would go to sleep, and that was really nice. And that was kind of influential somehow. And I think musicians, probably certain musicians like David Bowie, when I was about 15, was really influential. I don't know. I didn't read a lot. I mean, I read, but I didn't like read with my family, and I didn't pay attention in school. I was getting in trouble a little bit. So I think hanging out with friends sometimes, like in the summers, sometimes when I was like 12, we'd all hang out on the street corner, and that kind of little theater that happens when you get a chance to speak, and that was an important kind of situation somehow, I think. I didn't write my first poem till I was like 14, and I don't know why I did. I just went into a room and wrote it. I think it was a really bad rhyming poem called "The Roller Coaster of Life." Like I think about things go up and down, and so one of my biggest dilemmas early on was how can you talk in a poem? How can you? And I don't know what it was like growing up in England. I imagine the poetic tradition is more sort of integrated into the school curriculum. I think. I did hear T.S. Eliot reading the Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock on record when I was about 18 in high school, and I could recognize something happening in that poem for sure. But poetry was something I really didn't get exposed to until college, I don't think.
Chris has got his mute on.
Oh yes, sorry. Slow reactions on this computer. All right, the next question we have is for Jeff. This comes from John in Virginia. It's a two-part question. He says, in your poem about sadness, Jeff, he said it seemed to be quite funny. Was this on purpose? And the second part of this question is practical. He says, with the Chapel of Inadvertent Joy, did you send that directly to University of Pittsburgh Press because they published your last book, or did you send it out to some other people as well? Two-part question for you, Jeff.
Well, yeah, I mean, the sadness poem, I mean, yeah, I guess in my mind there's a degree of humor and a degree of seriousness, so a little bit of both. I was aware of it being kind of comedic, but I was also the subject. I was aware of it also being serious on some level for me. But like they did my last book, so once I was with them, I sent them this book. I think they told me the editor Ed Ochester told me to wait a year. He was like, "It's not ready. Wait a year," which at the time I found to be kind of annoying. But I think he was right. No one likes to be told they have to wait a year, but I think he was right. And no, I don't think I sent it anywhere else. And that's the end of my response.
Maybe we should say over at the end of when we're finished, like on walkie-talkies.
Or out. So, Jack, you have a book coming out this year?
Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. In
Hello? Yes, I'm on. Sorry.
oh
Wait,
yeah,
what?
I don't know.
Yep, go on. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Yeah, no. I got a book with Faber coming out in July. My first book, and I mean a year. They told me it would take 18 months from when they told me that before it came out. It's taken a little bit longer than that. But I mean the first draft I sent to them would have been about 4 years ago. So I mean I've been sitting on this egg for ages. And I'm just say I'm ready for it now. I'm ready for it to come out. But
Faber's a pretty big press in London, right?
yeah. They're well,
Right.
that's old TS's old
Right.
old publishing house. So yeah, I mean and they're very thorough and good and yeah, and they had the Faber New Poets Faber New Poets series. I think
Is that like an anthology that comes out?
it's these lovely pamphlets that they bring out.
Okay.
And so they're just like 18 poems or something like that, 18 pages, and they're for young poets who haven't yet got a book out. So I published there's my one from 2009. So they've been quite supportive in the sense that they published this pamphlet and then looked at the work and here we are now. So and there's some really good people on this. The Rachel Allen's new one is fantastic. So I'd recommend those to.
Who's the new person that you said?
Rachel Allen. Rachel Allen. She runs Tender Journal, which is an online journal with Sophie Collins. He's another good poet. So, but these are they're a good way in, I think, for any American readers wondering who to read. These are pretty good.
All right.
I think I have at least one book by them. They might have done a guy named Alexander Ristovic, a Serbian poet that Charles Simic would have translated.
I don't know it, but
It's called Devil's Lunch, but it came out about 10 years ago. You can't really get it in the U.S., I don't think.
hmm.
I think they might have done that book. But anyway.
All right, guys,
Congratulations.
we better get on. We've got some more questions coming in.
Yeah.
Not too much time. Jack, this one's for you. It's coming from Robert in Shropshire. And he says, you obviously enjoy playing with language and making your own languages and making your own interpretations, your translations. Have you used ideas such as Ulipo to take this further? And how successful do you find the process?
I'm not. I mean, I think that the Ulipo is kind of using a set framework to sort of provoke and nudge language around. And I've never used a framework to do that. I kind of like if you read a line by John Donne, and then you just say it how you would say it, and I just saw this sort of strange way that just that it's a bit more unpredictable, and I also like the way that the sort of chancing things against my brain, I suppose, just sort of putting stuff in, like one of those Play-Doh fun factories where you squish it and it comes out in this different shape. I quite like just chucking things in and seeing what comes out of my brain or the imagination. So I've never used a structure to sort of provoke imagination, but I do enjoy nudging things around and just playing really. I don't know if that answers the question. I haven't used any techniques, I guess, would be the answer. But and I don't know if I would. I don't know if that's necessarily what would interest me. I thought I'd prefer to sort of go on my nerve a bit more. But it certainly works. I've seen lots of people write sort of fantastic and strange things through sort of having these structures in place with these rules. Although I have to say I gave up on Perek's Life User's Manual or whatever. I just found that really difficult. It's like one of the only books I've given up on. But I still keep it on my shelf to make myself look clever. So.
All right, thank you, Jack. Next question is for you, Jeff. It comes from I think no, sorry, it's for both of you. It's from Debbie in Los Angeles, and she wants to know how your poems come to you. I'd also like to know how is there anything in common when your best poems come to you? Is there some kind of common situation or mood? That's my question. But Debbie's is how do most of your poems come to you? And that's right. Let's go to Jeff first on that question.
I wish there was some kind of way that thing that I knew that it would make a poem come to me, but really it's just having the time to sit down and write regularly, which I don't have much right now during the school year. But it's really just sort of the repetition of getting into a groove, showing up, writing, reading, having some time for thoughts. Those are all good things, and I think once you get in that rhythm, then things start to happen. Out.
Yeah, I've got I'd say it's similar for me. Really, I just think what you need to do is sort of make space. Sometimes in your diary, sometimes in your brain. I think one thing I find is that if I'm thinking and a poem sort of pops up, I think I had to teach myself to resist the urge to write it in my head. I think that just always kills a poem, and then when I come to write it down, I'm not sort of exploring. I'm trying to repeat something. So I think one of the things I try and do is to is to sort of not let the slippery critters get away when you're out and about doing things. Just sort of make maybe a note of a line or a thought or an image, and wait until you can actually make the poem. Wait until you're in a space where that's possible. And also I think like you get yourself in the mood a bit. Maybe drink something or I need sort of then silence. I can't sort of have people around. So, yeah. Are you with us, Chris? Jeff, have you got anything to add?
No, I don't have anything to add to that. But do you know? Is her name Francesca Beard?
Yeah.
Is she over there? I remember her from being there about 15 years ago, and there was a guy named some other people that I hung out with that I liked over there.
Tim Wells said that he met you.
Tim Wells, yeah. What's Tim Wells? Yeah. Tim Wells had some big book come out there, right?
I think he's had a book out. I had that shame.
Yeah, I met him a while ago. He's a wild character. I hung out with him in New York too. Yeah. I like that guy.
He's a legend. And you see him out at most things. He pretty much goes to like 2 or 3 poetry events a week or something. So
talking about and making things happen.
Yeah, you can. He's a safe bet. You can guarantee that if everyone else at an event, you think, oh, I'd rather, if they're a bit boring, there's always Tim,
He's got a great wit.
Yeah.
I haven't been to London in a while, I don't think, but and I think I met Francesca Beard about 15 years ago.
Mhm.
But yeah. Do you ever come to the U.S., Jack?
I've never been to the U.S. and I'm desperate to come, but I can't afford a plane ticket or or to find time in work. And
do you send your poems to U.S. magazines?
Do I what? Sorry.
Send your poems to U.S. magazines?
Yeah. Well, I've tried poetry before. And I think they might be reviewing the book as well. I can't think of any poetry magazines that
Have you been in poetry magazine in U.S.? That magazine?
No, I haven't. So, fingers crossed.
If you wanted to visit the U.S., it probably doesn't hurt to start publishing in U.S. magazines.
Yeah.
I mean, magazines over there too, I guess. They might. I wonder what the rules are if you can republish something in North America that was in England.
Yeah, that's a good a good question. I guess if it's on the internet, then it's annoying. But if it's but if it's just in a print edition, they probably
Who
wouldn't
was
mind.
this British guy who plagiarized all these American poets?
um,
Christian
there's-
Ward.
was it Christian Ward? There's
Something like
been a
that.
couple of plagiarism, scandals. But he was certainly the Christian Ward one was probably the most
Did you know
notorious.
that? You read the book and then you found out, oh my God, he plagiarized?
Um, I remember. I've sort of caught up with it all on Facebook, but we did actually in the SSYK and Stop Sharpening Your Knives, an anthology we run. I ran with Sam Riviere and Emily Berry and Heather Phillipson and Nathan Hamilton. We did publish one of his poems, which I like. I think it's a good poem, but presumably it's his. I mean, I don't think he didn't soul only plagiarize. He did write his own poems. So.
Yeah, I heard he was respected and stuff. Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of friends of mine who they felt very uncomfortable with the whole thing. I think they felt weirded out and not really happy to be a part of it.
Well, I think it probably is quite invasive, particularly if those poems have been put forward and won competitions and stuff like that. I mean, I think that's how he was rumbled in the end. Yeah, I think it would piss you off, wouldn't it? But I also think there was probably a bit too much of a kind of witch hunty overreaction, a bit of a bit of a hoo-ha. But then poetry communities love a hoo-ha, so it's sort of it was inevitable. But I think that once it's been rumbled, it's fine, isn't it? But I mean, that's not my poem, so I can't say how I'd feel. Perhaps I'd be mortified. Have we got any other questions, Christopher?
All right, so we don't really have any more time, but I would like to ask Jeff a question. It's one of his poems that I really like. I believe it's called Letter to the Woman Who Stopped Talking to Me. If that's wrong, Jeff will correct me. But it ends with, I've been ignored by prettier women than you, but none who've carried the heavy pictures of silence so far without spilling a drop. I like that very much. I only want to know, Jeff, does the woman of the poem, has she read this poem? Does she know about it?
It's funny you ask that because I have this, I'm writing this sort of like, I don't know, a memoir novel thing I've been working on for like 15 years. I'm trying to kind of get it published now, maybe, but I don't know anything about the fiction world or the prose world. But yeah, it's based on a real girl, and so the story was I made some big life changes, right? And I called her up, and I thought, okay, now that I've got off drugs and alcohol, me and this woman, we could totally hook up because now I'm in a good space, and we'll be a great couple. I'll come up to New York, and she totally blew me off. Like she would not, and I was like, what the fuck? And so I called her again, and she was just like really cold to me. So I wrote this poem. And I sent it to her, and then she called me back, and she was like, I really like that poem, but I'm still not going to talk to you. And then she just like hung up on me. Mike Stein knows who it's about. Mike Stein knows who it is.
All right, I'll ask Mike Stein. I'll no doubt see him for a few whiskeys at some point soon. All right.
Her name is Sloan. Her name is Sloan.
Sloan.
Yeah, she's got a few like kids books out. Ask who Sloan is.
All right.
You ever see Ferris Bueller's Day Off?
Yeah, I've seen it, yeah.
The character is named after her, apparently. Her dad was a big like TV guy.
Oh, okay. I'll have to watch it again. Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago. Right, Jack, Jeffrey, thank you very much for the reading. We have to wrap up on it now, so I'm going to stop the broadcast. Thank you very much to everyone who tuned in. You'll be able to see an edited version probably up on YouTube at some point to view for posterity. So I hope everybody enjoyed that. I certainly did. Very, very entertaining. Thanks very much, everybody.
Hey, Chris.
Thanks also to Robert Peake. Yes,
Chris. If we could just announce the upcoming show for next month, if that's all right.
Please do, Robert.
Yeah. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the late start. Next month we will be featuring Roberta Beery and Richard Gilbert joining us from Japan. and Roberta from the States, both two very different types of poets who focus on haiku. So lots of short poems happening at a slightly different time. So 29th of March at 4 p.m. UK time. That's to accommodate our poet coming in to read for us from Japan. He'll be reading at midnight in Japan. So do tune in on the 29th of March. Thanks again to both poets for an excellent evening. And I'll let you close out now. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, so once again, apologies for the technical problems. Purely my fault. I owe you fellows a single malt whiskey when I meet you. Unfortunately, the audience will have to buy their own. So thank you very much for tuning in. Please do buy the books of these poets, and please do read Body, www.bodyliterature.com. Thank you very much, and I'll say good night now. Good night.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.